I'm Mark Barger with CPD. I'm here with Michael Hill from CCI, and we're going to talk about CCI Revolution because it has been a storied product in its short life. Like it's really been a standout in the detailing industry. But then you have the fact that CCI has been a homemade, home built, homegrown in the USA coating company that hasn't really they haven't really like patted themselves on the back and pushed out marketing a whole lot. And I want to do a little background on it first, Michael, before we get into talking about Revolution. Founded in 2022 was
Yeah.
about when it started out. You and Brian Crosby, you whipped it all up yourself. Michael has an incredible background as a chemist. He knows his stuff. That they call him the brain for a reason, because I understand about 30% of what he says to me, because some of it just goes way over my head. Revolution was designed to be like just absolute top tier ceramic coating. He put tons of time and effort into it. So tell us, first of all, what went into creating Revolution? What happened whenever you had I guess, an ingredient issue, and then what went on from there?
So we wanted to make Revolution basically as a product that we didn't have a ceiling for, what we could do as far as, cost and things like that. Because a lot of time when you build a product out, you're like, this can be kind of our ceiling with cost. This is kind of where we need to be at, where we need to stay. And, I think almost every company out there will call to get products made or do something of that nature and be like, hey, we need to keep this kind of under this cost and just do the best you can with it. We just wanted to make a product that was not kind of constrained by our cost into it. At that point in time when I made Revolution was to basically take that and do the best I could to make the best product out there, period. And so we got the first rendition of it. Fantastic. I thought that was what we were gonna run with for a while. And then the US government and their customs, they usually give us, around 60 days at the minimum, kind of a thing of going, hey, this is kind of on the chopping block. This is no longer going to be able to be imported in. And one of the main ingredients at that point in time just got here, sitting there waiting in the port to go to be blended. And they're just like, no, we're going to send that back. And they still haven't even given us real reason for that. And then speaking to other chemical companies, they said they've kind of run into this as well because, they got all the kind of upheaval with imports and, all that type of stuff in. So we had to make a real quick formulation change. The product was still great, but it wasn't where we wanted it at again. So then we made another rolling change. It kind of increased the application difficulty, I would say, just slightly, and a couple of other things. So we wanted to basically go back in, rework it, get it to where exactly it needed to be, and move forward with that. So I guess it's been now a little over 5 weeks since it's been in stock. We've took all that time, did testing on it, did all the things we needed to do to get it to back to where we're very confident in saying this is easily the best coating on the market. We've addressed all of the concerns that are come from our group members, from our pro installers, just everybody's input. We've taken all that into consideration and made those changes and went back to something we feel or is, tip of the spear again. And also making sure that we've touched on all the bases from our installers.
Yeah, and I want to just highlight this because I've been involved with a lot of ceramic coating companies, a lot of industry people, and I've I've been a certified installer for several companies throughout my career as a detailer. And most of the time, it's not really based much off of actual installer feedback, what's done with a product. Most of the time, it is based off of corporate decisions. And then I've even been involved with some companies where, the installers would give that feedback. We don't like this. This isn't working for us. We're having issues with it. And sometimes it's just a tweak in application process. Sometimes it's a tweak in, how the actual detailing is done. But I have seen a couple times in my career where it was a product side tweak. I think, and anyone that was familiar with what I call Rev 1, Rev 2, and Rev 3, Rev 1 was, it was a great product. It had a few very tiny caveats, but one of them one of the best things about it is that it was, for what it did, it was the most stupid easy to install product ever. I mean, I could have brought my 13-year-old daughter out here in hour. She could have been installing the coding on a car and probably doing a pretty darn good job at it. And whenever the ingredient went out of play and it had to be changed, you got to understand, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I remember C-Quartz, OptiCoat Pro Plus, the first rendition of that. That was hard to install. Crystal Serum Ultra, hard products to install. Like, you had to be on your game all the time. And Rev 2 was a 6 out of 10 on application difficulty, whereas Rev 1 was like a 2 out of 10. So if you went from Revolution version 1 to version 2, I can see, especially if maybe you haven't been around forever like I have. In the detailing industry, it's forever. I can see where that would be a hard jump skill wise.
Right. It was the same way with me when I guess when doing the testing is, I come from, like you said, C Corp's finest and those where it was just, for lack of better terms, kind of nightmarishly to install.
Yeah.
So that extra little bit of effort that I had to put into it, to me, I guess my brain was like, oh, this is still pretty easy. Whereas, like I said, if you were to take somebody who just got into the coding market and was using Revolution, version one and advanced and things like that right there, that would be a huge variation difference to those guys.
Yeah.
So we fully understand that. And like I said, we went back in the drawing board, made those changes, and moved forward from there. And we, like I said, we took that one was one of the things we took into consideration, turning up all the aspects of it. Now that we've got it, basically the engine torn down in the car, let's go ahead and improve some other things while we're in here.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to, I know a lot of guys were like, hey, anybody got a bottle around? Because, they've been out and things like that. But we wanted to make sure that we took the time to do this one 100%. When it comes back out, this checks everybody's boxes of what they wanted, Revolution to be. Even some of the caveats from version one, we went in and kind of made tweaks to where those wouldn't be there anymore.
Right.
So, like I said, we made a list of everything of people saying, "Hey, this is what we want." We made sure to go in there and check all those boxes off, and we're good to go from there.
I think from my experience in this, because I've tested products for a lot of companies. I remember when SPS graphene was a new thing, and they were sending me test bottles of that, and that stuff was very hard to apply. It was a very good coating, but it was very hard to apply. How hard is it? And I know there are a lot of very good coatings that are also very hard to apply. How hard is it to make a coating still have all that stuff you want, but still make it easy to apply at the same time? Because that seems like the magical combination that's really hard to grab onto.
Yes, I mean, if you go either which way and that's your full, path you're going down, it's pretty easy. So if we just make a coating that's gonna, perform crazily to, all those things, then your installation is gonna be a little bit difficult. But if we make like the super easy to put on, then you kind of have to leave off some of those things. So you've got to reach that balance of where you're good on both sides. And sometimes, like I said, could we make a much more harder, more glossy, that type of stuff? Yes, we could. But then again, that's going to start taking away from the ease of application, that type of stuff. And like I said, we try to strike a extremely good balance in between those and making the product. Because, in our industry, time is money. So these guys, they have these shops, if they've got to spend 5 hours putting a coating on versus, spending an hour and a half, that's cutting into their bottom line. And, the most expensive part of the detailing industry is our time. So I feel that if we can get extremely great performance with the ease of application, that you can do it in a quarter of the time that you could, one of the way more difficult ones, then that balance is struck, and that's a good place to be in. And so that's kind of where we try to shoot at in between those.
So I've got some videos that I've already recorded on the application of Revolution version 3. And to me, I was super happy with it. It flashes a little bit slower than Revolution version 1, which I actually like, because Revolution 1 was so fast that you had to be moving. Like, you wiped it on and immediately it was ready to level off within seconds, which some people loved. I liked it, but it was a little bit pressury because there was not much time to even put your applicator down before you grabbed your towels to level it off there. And I think that Revolution 3 has kind of found that middle ground in there where you have time to work the product, you have time to grab your towels, you have time to take a sip of your drink if you need to, but at the same time, you're not kind of constrained by sitting there watching it slowly turn into the rainbow effect and all that. So I feel like it's a good middle ground. The slickness, you've worked that back into it to where it, and I think slickness is a very relative thing. It really is. It's good for the customer to feel that, because I even have customers that'll go up to a coated car when they get it, like, ooh, feel how smooth it is and feel how slick it is. But at the same time, 2 years from now, without crazy maintenance and toppers and all that, no coating is going to have like the original slickness to it. So from what I found, and I went in pretty in depth in this on the Certified Professional Detailers closed group. I did some pretty legitimate chemical testing to it, and I found that it performed excellent, but I also don't expect that any ceramic coating, if I sit there and pour bizarre chemicals on it, is going to keep its hydrophobic properties forever. That is an absolute fantasy. That's an absolute fantasy. You can't do 4 rounds of full strength purple power on anything and expect it to still have hydrophobic properties. It's just not going to work that way. So I broke down the coating, but I was super impressed that it even lasted that long, because I had it sitting beside a couple of other coatings and they didn't last through a third of what I poured on Revolution version 3. So overall, revamp the product. It's not 100% easier to use than version 1. It's maybe tiny bit harder to use than version 1, but at the same time, it's a little more forgiving. It does have a little more work time. There's a little bit more like visual cue, as far as version 1 was really strong on the beading, was your visual cue. And on version 3, you've got the beading and you've also got the rainbow flash. That's a really strong visual cue. So overall, to me, I'm pretty excited about it. And I've always said that I want a coating that performs really well for my customers, but it can't be something that I hate applying.
And it's got to be enjoyable, So anything we make has to be a good experience. Like I said, it has to kind of tie into ease of application, to where when you get to, because back when you and I started doing this stuff, all the polishing and stuff out there in our minds, like, oh man, now we got to coat this thing, and you're just like in almost panic mode of, you're having to even dial in. And what I'm trying to do, with any products with CCI for our coatings, it's okay, cool. Now we just got to coat it right fast and we're done. Have that mindset of going
Yeah.
in and we've done the hard work, the polishing, the compounding, getting the car prepped, and now it's time for using a very friendly coating that's going to be an enjoyable process, that we're not super scared of messing the paint up, messing all the work we've put into it, and still knowing that we've got the best product on the market coating the vehicle.
So, a couple things before we get off of here. I just have to touch on, talk about, because I know this is like the big thing and always has been in the industry. Talk about hydrophobic properties. And because we as the detailing industry think if hydrophobics get diminished, even 3, 5 years into a coating's life, it means the coating itself has failed. Can you talk about chemically what's going on when you see diminished hydrophobics?
Yeah, so to diminish, I mean, there's so many things that play into the hydrophobics on there. Anything, as the old saying goes, whatever is on the surface is how the water behavior is going to react. So if we're wiping down the car with, any type of chemical, even a quick detailer or something like that, it's going to start taking those properties. If your client's using a quick wax McGuire's, to wash their vehicle with, that's going to start diminishing it as well. But a lot of times, just over time, most of your hydrophobic properties are sitting right there on the top of it. Through Revolution, it is built almost all the way through that, but there's so many things that can get in there that can clog it up: oils, greases, just so many things, especially stuff coming off the road. God knows what chemicals are on the road that are splashing up on it. And then, at the end user, what are they spraying on it? Or, doing something, for example, I've got a good friend of mine that does track days all the time. And so the back end of his car loses hydrophobics, and then in 6 months, but he runs, pure ethanol for his fuel in his race car. So
Yeah.
you've got that ethanol just eating up any of the organics that are into that coating. There's so many things out there that are meant to strip off, degreasers, very heavy cleansers, all that stuff will, dry the organics up in there that are making your hydrophobics, all that type of stuff. So it just basically is meant to strip away what makes those coatings hydrophobic. Even, people who wash their cars in Dawn dish soap, strip the grease away. It's meant to strip things chemically off of surfaces. Like I said, there's so many things that fight against that chemistry that is the hydrophobics that either make those fail or kind of diminish over time. And, just like we're testing the new coating, it didn't even have time enough for the hydrophobic properties to bloom up to the top before it got into a hard casing on there. So the protection for chemical protection, scratch resistance, all that stuff is still there very firmly. And, just the hydrophobics or the water behavior is not. So a lot, for example, when the original hybrid was out, yeah, it was, the hydrophilics. Like, oh, there's not even a coating on here. The water's not behaving. So everybody just, especially customers and a lot of detailers even will, if they don't see water behavior, then there's nothing there, which
Yeah.
is, far beyond the actual, case of it. But we've been conditioned so much as consumers and detailers to think that coating means hydrophobics, and that's the only telltale sign of seeing that. Even if we, I'm out in the country a little bit. If I use the well water out here, which is, about 200 to 300 ppm, and I do that for a month, let it dry on there, then now I've got all these trace minerals sitting on top of it. And of course, the water's not going to beat off of it. So, like I said, it's just the hydrophobic thing is great. And all the companies that are out there now are trying to build stronger and stronger hydrophobics because they know that the end user and customers associate coating with hydrophobics. And that's the only kind of thing they're putting with it.
Yeah, and I find it ironic though because in reality, the hydrophobic elements to a car, whether it's coated or not, that is the easiest thing to restore through
Right.
maintenance, toppers, top coats, all this other. You can always put something on top of a coated vehicle that's going to make it hydrophobic again, and that's
Right.
the easiest stuff to bring back. But the hardness, the chemical resistance, the look that you locked in with the coating, that's the part that's really long term important because even when I have customers that are they're not even coated with CCI because they've had their coated vehicle for so long and they bring it in and for the most part, if it was properly applied, if they've taken decent care of it, if they brought it in for maintenance, the car still looks really good. It looks really good. It may not be like day one, but it still looks really, really good. So I think CCI is addressing the balance there between we want it to be hydrophobic, but we also want to make sure we're preserving the surface. And because that's really what a ceramic coating is designed to do is preserve the surface and
Right.
keep people's vehicles looking great.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a fine balance, and if we take and said, "Hey, hydrophobics are the only refining quality of a ceramic," then we can take hydrophobic sprays, like the one I sent you to test, that gives wild hydrophobics, but there's all the other things that are important to the ceramic are not there. There's just
Yeah.
all the hydrophobics are there. So using it as your only telltale sign is definitely not the way to go. But I understand our customers will spray it and they're like, man, it's not water beating anymore. The coating is gone. So like I said, that's just a weird mindset that people have gotten into and are kind of death gripping on right now. So
I think that if a coating is going to fail, like truly fail, like just didn't cling to the surface, didn't bond, didn't adhere, all whatever you want to say to it, it's going to do that within like the first month. The first couple of washes, it's going to notice like almost like nothing's there. So whenever people say, oh, it was great for the first 2 years, even not CCI, any coating out there, when they say it was great for the first year, it was great for the first 2 years, it was great for the first 3 years. And then it was great. Like if
right,
that coating truly failed, it would have failed within the first 2 to 4 weeks. First couple times you washed it, whatever was on the surface that didn't cling properly, didn't adhere properly, is going to be gone. And I think that's something that, we can kind of hats off to any ceramic coating company. If it lasts for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's done a pretty good job.
right,
It doesn't fail just because 3 years into being sitting outside in the country, washed with well water and Dawn dish soap, that the hydrophobics are less than they were at day one. That it's a really poor metric that we put on things. And then I what I've seen through my whole career is that we apply coatings okay, and then because they don't live up to like this fantasy that we have about how a coating should apply, what do? Bounce to a new bottle. Well, this
Right.
this coating is going to fix all my problems, and it really doesn't, because usually the people that do, yeah, a year later they're bouncing to a new bottle, and then they're bouncing to it, and it just continues on that. So we want to make sure, and really, I never really get complaints about that. And I've coated on 2,000 cars with my own two hands. I never get customers that say, "Well, I've had it on here for 5 years and it doesn't bead like day one," because I never gave them that expectation.
Yeah, and you just it's doing proper maintenance to them and bringing them in and doing that type of stuff. I mean, this is a wearable item. It's on there as a sacrificial layer to keep your original paint in great condition to preserve it and things like that right there. And the big thing is that I try to stress to a lot of people when I'm talking to is this stuff is a little over a micron thick. And if you take that into reality, I mean that very small barrier is doing some work. And I've tested almost everything out there. And if any of these companies are telling you that they've got 20, 30, 40 micron thick coating, it might be when you lay it on before you wipe it off and level it. But even then, I mean, that's an impossibility from, physics standpoint of 50 milliliters in one bottle, 150,
Yeah.
160 square foot on a vehicle. But, I think, and we've talked about this before, just kind of educating our customers, educating the people installing the product of going, this stuff is 1.1, 1.2 microns thick. This is what it can offer. The hardness on it has to be insane because it is that thin. So yeah, just I think just having the mindset of understanding what a coating is, how it performs, what its capabilities are, and then, kind of understanding that this is something that does need, maintenance and things like that to help bolster it to keep it in that pristine, kind of ballpark.
Yep. So yeah, well, I won't go down the whole coding chemistry thing because we could talk for hours and hours about that. But Revolution version 3, it's back in stock, waiting to be, I think, labeled as of the recording of this. This is not a live recording. This is a pre-recorded video, but it is back, but they're waiting for it to be boxed and labeled and all that so it can actually be shipped out. I've tested it myself. In fact, they sent it to me like whenever it first came in to start playing with it and wiping it on panels and stuff like that. I was super, super happy with it. And I liked version 2. Like I didn't have any major issues with version 2. I thought it was a little harder to install. It took a little longer for the cross linking to fade away, which is when you see hazing whenever you wipe off a coating and level it. This is greatly reduced in version 3, like 15, 20 seconds, and it all disappears, whereas it was like a minute or two on version 2, which a lot of people, if you weren't new with ceramic coatings, you were like freaking out. Oh my God, what's going on here? And that's just the polymers that were cross-linking, and you could visually see that whenever that happened. So all in all, great product. The slickness came back, the ease of application. I will still say I just finished editing the video on advance on how to apply that. You still can't grossly under apply this product. You
Right.
can't. Anyone who is stretching a bottle of coating over 3, 4, 5 vehicles, I don't care what you have.
Right.
I don't care how much it costs, what it's made out of, how well the chemistry is, how pure the ingredients are. If you're stretching something that's already super, super thin into a fifth of what it should be, you're not going to get durability.
Right.
You're going to be really good to get a year or two out of it. And that goes not just for CCI, that goes for any coating. If you're trying to make a coating that's designed to be like, let's say, a 30 mil bottle over a Mazda 3, that's what it's designed to do, a 30 mil bottle over a Mazda 3. Or let's say for advance, 2 Mazda 3s over a 50 mil bottle of advance, but you're trying to put it on 6 Mazda 3s, one single bottle, just not going to work. You're always going to run into issues with that. And you can, if you want, sit there and blame the coating, but I don't care what coating you go to. If you're practicing under application as a habitual thing, you're always going to have issues with it.
Right. That's true. Yeah,
All
well,
right.
I'm
Well,
very excited for everybody to get this version of it. I think that we have literally checked off all the boxes for all of our input coming in from everybody. And I think you guys are going to be extremely pleased with this one. The performance, the durability, longevity of it, the hydrophobics on it, the softness, basically everything that people have asked for in this one. I think that we have hit that mark with this.
Yeah, and I have to say, just as a closing note here, that is a company that actually cares, and that's part of the reason why I'm so into CCI myself, is because the company actually cares about the end user, and that is not just our customers, but the detailers in general. They want to make sure that the detailers are happy and as many boxes as possible are getting checked. And I think that's the real advantage of not being like a mega corporation that's completely driven by margins and profits and stuff like that. Because it would have been a whole lot cheaper when CCI was first created to just go get a stock formula and make one tiny little tweak to it and send it out there and say, oh, this is the best of the best. But it's all been built from the ground up. And I think that's a really impressive part of it. Do you guys have any questions? This is going to be multiple. It's going to be a long form video. We're going to pull a bunch of reels out of this. You can always get on the CCI website and contact CCI directly. There's a contact form on there. There's email addresses, and they would be happy to answer any questions you have.
We appreciate you guys.